Welcome, everybody, to the Men's Sexual Mastery Podcast. This is your host, Ian Hawks, and your other host, Ben Timby.
What's up? What's up?
What's up, Ben? Yeah, we are here every week to drop in on all topics, sex and intimacy, in service to the awakening, empowering, and aligning of all the men out there tuning in who are interested in elevating their experience of sex and sexuality in their life in a way that fuels self-realization, spiritual growth and evolution, and ultimately we are in service to the future generations, being born into households where the men are holding the pillar of intimacy in their relationship with their partner, warming the home with the hearth of that love and connection between man and woman, between two partners, in a way that creates an environment for the children to grow up in thriving. So with that, let's get into it. Today, we're going to drop into a little discussion around sex as meditation. So Ben, what does sex as meditation mean to you?
Oof, man, I love this topic so much. I was so excited when we hit the record button or just before hitting record, decided on this topic. You know, for me, and I think for many of us who are discovering this path of using our sexual energy as the life force that it's taught to be in a lot of these ancient lineages, these spiritual lineages, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda. It is a rocket fuel, an accelerant for growth. And when it's merged with meditation, which in my opinion is the purest spiritual practice, getting into that state, pure flow state, pure connection with everything that is, and love making with everything that is, it can absolutely transform our lives. And I feel like they say sex amplifies love, love amplifies sex. That's like a traditional teaching in the Tao. And I would also say the same is true for meditation. You know, sexual energy amplifies meditation, meditation amplifies sex, sexual energy. So yeah, that's what comes up for me. How about you? What would you say?
Yeah, I love that. Well, that point on meditation amplifying sex and sexual energy, that's what comes up for me. This opportunity that we have to bring meditation into lovemaking. And that could be with ourselves or with a partner. But bringing that intention and that approach and some of the techniques that we can learn from different meditative practices into lovemaking, and how profoundly that amplifies the experience of sexual energy, how much that amplifies the experience of connection between two partners or connection with ourself. If we're just doing like a self-pleasure or solo cultivation practice, while really being in that energy of meditation, not just the energy, but the practice of meditation. So I'd love to just get down to the brass tacks of like, what does that mean? What does that look like? How do we bring meditation into sex?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all about this one. And just a quick clarification I would add to that you said so well is just, you can also call this flow state, essentially, getting out of our heads and getting out of the conditioning that a lot of us are in unconsciously, whether that's porn reenactment, like we talk about all the time, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with primal sexual energy, very masculine, very orgasm and ejaculation based sexual relating, but there's just a whole nother spectrum that we can tap into as men. And just to give more context, we're talking about a lot of this podcast and a lot of our work, the ability of men to separate orgasm and ejaculation, and to be able to go deeper and to ride these more subtle waves. And I do think meditation is a great way to describe the state we're going into as we're treading deeper into these waters. So yeah, I would love for you to share with any of the brothers listening how you have brought this into your practice and talking brass tacks.
Yeah. So one of the most quintessential foundational meditation practices is breath awareness. That's a place that probably anyone listening in who's ever engaged in some form of meditation has explored that practice of breath awareness. So, like, what does that mean in meditation? It's quite simply to bring the single point of our focus and attention to breath, to the breath coming in and the breath moving out. In Vipassana meditation, that's the starting point. And it's actually just focusing on this little triangle between the nostrils and the upper lip and feeling the flow of breath moving in and out of the nose, and tuning into like the really subtle qualities of physical sensation that accompany that movement of breath. And so why would we do that? Just to zoom out a little bit more about like, what is the intention of meditation at all? My understanding and experience with it is the intention is to bring us into the present moment, to be completely here and now, to be here now, as Ram Dass says. And it's really about like any number of techniques that we can use that quiet the mind from being forward or backward oriented and just really being here with what's happening in this moment. And so breath awareness, the breath is the gateway to the present moment because it's an activity that we're doing all day, every day. And when we bring our awareness to the breath, we bring our consciousness into this moment, right here, right now. So to start out as like the most simple practice of bringing meditation into sex, breath awareness. And then with that breath awareness, there's different techniques that we can use to focus on our breath or be intentional with our breath. So using reverse Kegels and Kegels. So that's bringing another layer of intention where I'm aware of my breath and I'm willing that breath, I'm inviting that breath to actually take a specific action in my body. And that's a little bit different than just purely mindful breath awareness. This is getting a little bit into like breath work, but breath work can also be a form of meditation. It's just the subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, manipulation of our breath, but we're still bringing our awareness to that. And breath work can be a sort of training wheels for meditation, because when we bring more intention to our breath, it requires more of our attention to do that. So it's like gonna serve to bring us even more quickly and easily into the awareness of the breath. So whether you're in a solo cultivation practice, pleasuring yourself, or you're with a partner, just as often as possible, coming back to the awareness of what is my breath doing? Can I feel in my body where my breath is moving? And then exploring like, what would it feel like if I actually encouraged my breath to move even deeper into my body, right down into the pelvic floor? So a reverse Kegel, for example, which is a really great breathing technique to use during sex with self or other, is about breathing right down into the pelvic floor and actually almost like pushing and expanding that pelvic floor outwards and downwards. So if you're not familiar with the reverse Kegel and you're listening in, you could practice this yourself by imagining that you're pushing out a bowel movement or starting the flow of urine as you're inhaling. So it's an active inhale, but we're not clenching or tightening any muscles. We're actually like opening and pushing them outwards. So breathing in through the nose, bringing that breath right down into the pelvic floor, and imagine you're pushing out a bowel movement, and see if you can feel that downward and outward expansion of the perineum, of the anus, and of the genitals. And that's a reverse Kegel. And when we do that, we're inviting blood flow into our genitals. We're dropping our awareness deep down into the root. It's really grounding. And that alone is, if you just come back to that again and again and again throughout sex with yourself or other, it's going to help you come into your body, come into the present moment. And it's also going to encourage more energy movement and circulation of that sexual energy in the body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great entryway for a lot of men getting started, and even advanced practitioners, even for myself too. I know that's the foundation of everything. I love that you just mentioned that as, breath is the gateway for everything. And I'd love to quickly here just pivot into talking about the nervous system a little bit as well,
Mhm.
because our ejaculatory orgasm response is a sympathetic nervous system response. We're clenching, right? Our breathing shortens, it gets really shorter and shorter. Our whole body is clenching, 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 and then we have the release, right? So if men are practicing trying to delay ejaculation and even separate orgasm and ejaculation, this, as Hawks mentioned, is the first foundational piece to work on, and really is just, I mean, this alone, you can achieve those states actually just through practicing this if you did it enough. Again, there are many, many, many other tools, and this is a lot of the stuff we deep dive in our training to get guys on the quantum path with daily accountability, with step-by-step protocol of, stacking these different practices. But again, just for people who are, just beginning this work, what Hawks mentioned, as you breathe into that pelvic floor with the reverse Kegel, bringing that breath down, this is down regulating your nervous system into a parasympathetic state. And when we can pattern interrupt the unconscious programming of clenching when the sexual sensations come up, when the pleasure comes up, the more we can actually bring in this breathing and slow things down and drop our breath and let out sighs. Sighs also really help for shifting our vagal tone. Exhales, big, deep exhales with a sigh, and breathing in with those reverse Kegels. This is the easiest practice, I would say, to get started in down regulating, which will allow us to last longer and also bring more subtle sensations as we've spoken to. So, is there anything else you want to throw into there, Hawks?
Yeah, I would add in that, like as you said, Ben, this is going to help us to last longer because we're inviting our nervous system to come into relaxation and openness rather than contraction and tightening. And there's also, and so you related that to the ejaculation orgasm response being one that comes from a sympathetic, predominantly sympathetic activation of the nervous system. And so the other side of that is arousal itself actually comes from the parasympathetic nervous system, being our being, like our state being predominantly in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest. It's more calm. And that's the arousal coming from that parasympathetic place is an important distinction to add in here as well, because this then also influences our ability to become engorged, to have an erection. It's like that erection comes from a place of calm nervous system regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And so slowing down our breathing is also going to help us in that actual arousal uh,
Mm-hmm.
phase. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to think about lasting longer and having a more consistent or a larger erection, just like looking at how can I encourage my nervous system to be calm and relaxed. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, the breath is huge for that. And those audible exhalations and sighs, as you mentioned, are also huge. So we talked about the inhalation being in through the nose, slow and deep down into the pelvic floor with that reverse Kegel. And then the exhalation, letting out an audible sigh. That's also going to like further that process of calming the body, allowing us to drop in. And all of this, to bring it back to the meditation, is really bringing us into the present moment as well. We're here with ourselves, with our body. And if we're with a partner, it's also going to help co-regulate our partner, because when someone that we're sharing space with is really in their breath, when someone's in a meditative place of being fully present and in like with intention with their breath, it actually just naturally entrains other people in the space to become more aware of their breath as well and to sync up with that slow regulated breath. So we're also serving our partner in this way to help her come into more regulation and a slower breathing pattern and a deeper breathing pattern as well. And so it's also an opportunity for us to lead by first being fully present with ourselves. And then from that place, we can be fully present with our partner. And then from that place, our partner is invited and often just naturally, unconsciously entrained into becoming more present with herself and with us. And yeah, that's where a lot of
Mhm.
the magic happens in sex when we're actually here right now.
Yeah.
You experience it because that's all we have. And if there's, if the mind is wandering into fantasy or thinking about to-do lists or other
Or anxiety,
distracting,
performance anxiety, if you're
yeah,
struggling with that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, anything we can do to like bring ourselves back into the moment, back into our body is going to allow us to just access so much more of our own
Mhm.
capacity and of like the generative nature and the healing qualities of sex that are there, but they're not predetermined. It's up to us to actually become available for the medicine that sex can be. And it requires us to
Mhm.
really like be there with it.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And I'd love to just outline a really basic step by step when we really want to keep it on. I know you and I both spoke to keeping this in brass tacks and just applicable, relatable stuff, because I know this work can be really deep. But just to highlight these points we've been making and to outline it in a sequence, I would say it starts with that working the muscle internally, showing up in a meditation practice, showing up in this breathing technique on your own consistently every single day, that slowly builds this internal state of presence. Then the more time you spend in that state, the more it expands into, just throughout your day, it expands into lovemaking. So it's, showing up in the gym. We like to say there's working out and there's working in. And, Paul Chek calls it the spirit gym, like showing up in your own internal gym, working in, doing this consistently every single day outside of sex and all of that is the first foundation. And that's why in our training, we have daily accountability. We have, the whole systems in place to allow brothers to have a daily routine where they're getting in those reps consistently, because without having a meditation practice, when getting those reps in, getting that practice in, when it's game day, you're not going to be ready. So
Mhm.
step one is building a daily meditation practice, and this can just start with a simple 5-minute, 10-minute practice. There's all sorts of tools out there to support people in that. We really recommend Insight Timer. Hawks, do you have something to throw in there?
Yeah. In addition to the daily meditation practice, daily
Mm-hmm.
breath awareness practices as well, I would
Mm-hmm.
put into that category of something that it's important we train outside of the bedroom so that then
Mm-hmm.
when we're in the bedroom, it's just naturally coming in anyways. And so for breath awareness, like I was just speaking to
Mm-hmm.
with slowing and deepening the breath, that quality of a shorter, shallower breath, we can also become aware of when that shows up in our body throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it will. As we bring more awareness, we'll start to notice, like, oh, I'm breathing shorter and shallower right here, right now. And that's also a result of stressors in our environment. If we're feeling anxious about something, if we're in an uncomfortable environment, there tends to be constriction of the breath. And vice versa, if our breath is constricted, it creates this experience of our external world as being more like anxiety provoking. And
Mm-hmm.
noticing when our breathing pattern shifts to that shorter, shallower, constricted breath pattern, which will also show up as we're increasing arousal in the bedroom and approaching ejaculation, as you were speaking to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Having the awareness of, oh, my breathing pattern has shifted, and now I'm going to intentionally bring it back to that slow, deep, regulated place. LSD breathing, light, slow, and deep. So, like breathing only as strong or intensely as we need to for the metabolic demands of whatever we're doing in that moment, and then slowing the breath down. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out is a sort of rough general sweet spot to be in, which is going to be typically a lot slower than most people are naturally breathing. And then deep being where in the body is that breath moving to? A shallow breath is just coming up into the collarbone or the chest. A deep breath is coming all the way down to the pelvic floor, like actually even deeper than just the belly breathing that we've all heard so much about. So light, slow, and deep, just keeping that LSD acronym running in the background. So at any point during the day, we can check in. What's my breath doing? Is it light, slow, and deep right now? And if not, can I repattern that in this moment? And then the more that we train ourselves to do that in the day to day, the more that we'll naturally start to do that in the bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So daily meditation practice, breath awareness throughout the day, as Hawks mentioned, I would put all of that in step one, starting from the inside out, as we say. This is an inside out job in leadership, learning how to regulate our nervous system throughout the day, deal with our own emotions. We're not going to be able to show up when our partner's dysregulated, when she's upset or when she's emotional, if we don't have a relationship and an ability to lead ourselves through our own emotions. And the breath is how we do that. So that all being step one, which in and of itself is a huge topic. Step two, I would offer is, bringing this into solo cultivation, as we've mentioned, self-pleasure, starting to bring these practices into a daily devotional practice where you are touching yourself and getting aroused and playing with the breath and noticing your contractions, noticing the sympathetic response, the breath going shallow, and practicing consciously pattern interrupting that, just like we are in our conscious breathing, throughout the day. So practicing that on our own, bringing in the sexual energy component, and doing that even if we're in relationship in our own space, creating a space for that. Again, this is doing the reps. This is like doing the layups before the basketball game, doing the free throws. And then step three is bringing it to relationship. All that work we've been doing behind the scenes finally can show up in the bedroom as we are regulating ourselves and in training, our partner through it, slowing down our arousal, deepening our subtle sensations and hers as well, as she's following the rhythm of our breath, which is leading the space in a really deep and powerful way. So I wanted to mention those just in a clear order. And then I'd love to chat a little bit about, I know our time's coming up soon, but bringing this element specifically, let's say with the breath practice that we're talking on, this being the simplest form of how to get into that meditative flow state in the bedroom. Syncing up your breath with your partner, as we spoke to, is something that can happen unconsciously, but also, when getting into a position with your partner where you sit in what we call yab yum is one of my favorites for this. You're cross-legged, she's cross-legged, she's sitting on top of you, facing you, you're face to face, and syncing up your breath together. Big, deep inhales through the nose, letting out a sigh together, and just noticing what's happening. Again, big, deep inhale like we've been talking about, expanding into the pelvic floor. Sign on that exhale with your partner, and just doing that one simple practice without even needing to move at all. Just, we call it plugging into your partner. Allow your penis to go soft or hard and just notice what happens. Oftentimes when our penis gets softer, there can be more sensations actually that come through it if you've never experienced that. And this is something that, porn never taught us, right? Actually, when the fascia isn't so tight, there can actually be more conductivity, of sexual energy essentially through the circuits into your partner's body. So just wanted to mention that as like an additional practice, just these layers of a very simple breath guided meditation practice that can go all the way from your own private practice into the depths of sexual union and pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned the subtle sensations, and I want to double click on that as another element of meditation and bringing meditation into sex, because, Ben, you and I have both gone through multiple Vipassana 10-day silent meditations, and Vipassana teaches a really acute, fine-tuned awareness to subtle sensations in the body. And then with that, what you're really cultivating is equanimity to those sensations, whether they
Mhm.
are comfortable or uncomfortable, pleasurable or or not. It's like, how can I be
Mhm.
just fully equanimous with whatever is right now and not move to try and change it? Is a big part of the Vipassana practice. But bringing that element of awareness to sensations, physical or energetic sensations in the body, is another massive way to bring meditation into sex. And it can greatly amplify the experience of pleasure and the experience of those sensations, because what we focus on grows, where our attention goes, energy flows. And like, the ability to actually slow down and be so present with what's going on in the body that we can feel those subtle sensations and allow them to expand and allow them to grow and move throughout the body is, one of the crucial steps in eventually experiencing non-ejaculatory orgasms or full body energetic orgasms. It's our ability to actually really be present and aware of what's already always happening. It's just, there's often such addiction to intensity, especially for like men who have trained themselves through porn and that rapid building of tension to an ejaculatory release. It's like there's this association of the pleasure comes with the ejaculation. But when we shift that to actually at any point along that orgasmic arc, how much awareness can I bring to whatever sensations are there right now? And it's another tool to get out of our head and into the body, and to come right into the here and now and be like, what is my body feeling right now? Oh, what's that little tingling? Or it might be very pleasurable. And actually there's another pattern that, or like a kind of tool to last longer, that I'm sure we've all heard about, where it's like, think about a sports team, or like think about your grandmother or something, heaven forbid, during lovemaking, to like bring that arousal back down to try and last longer. But all of that's like escapism. It's actually pushing us further away from what's right here, right now. And that is doing a massive disservice to our ability to actually like experience and enjoy and relish in the generative nature of the lovemaking that we're experiencing. So rather than trying to get out of ourselves, can we come back into ourselves and be present with those sensations? And if it does feel like it's a bit much and that arousal is starting to build out of control, then slow down and deepen your breath and start to actually just see if you can bring that energy to other places in the body. And this element of really being aware and like meditating on, what is my body experiencing, what are the physical sensations that I'm experiencing in my body right now, is another powerful way to bring meditation into sex. And then, to use your format there, Ben, we can do that with meditation practice on our own. We can start to bring that awareness to physical sensations in the body, or working with something like the microcosmic orbit meditation is going to allow us to bring more awareness to those subtle energetic sensations. And then we bring that into a solo cultivation practice, where we're just being really present with the physical sensations in our body and not pushing or driving towards a release. We're actually just enjoying every step along the way. And then when we bring that into partnership, we can eventually become so aware of the sensations in our body that then we expand beyond the sensations just in our body, and we can actually feel what our partner's feeling. And then that's this like co-meditation experience that's really powerful, where her pleasure becomes our pleasure and vice versa. And there can be such a acute level of attunement that it's becomes difficult to even differentiate, like, what's her pleasure and what's my pleasure, what are her physical sensations and what are my physical sensations. And we can get into this like flow state, as you mentioned, that allows the two to become one, and we're just cultivating pleasure and love together. And and that's only, in my experience, really possible when we're fully present with first ourselves and then our partner, and
Mhm.
bringing that meditative quality to sex.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the one variable that is consistent throughout all of it is staying with the breath. Like anytime we lose the breath, we drift out of the sensations, we drift out of that flow state, not just in the bedroom but in life. So these are really deep codes we're talking here, and I'm really happy you brought up the equanimity piece. Um, just a one last little sprinkle on there I'd add before I know we got to sign off here is that showing up without any agenda, even to reach an orgasm or to bring your partner orgasms or you orgasms in the bedroom, is a precursor to all of this. So many women have never been with a man who is practicing not releasing his uh, semen every time he has sex, not trying to get towards the goal, which is that's the porn programming where like we go until the man ejaculates and then you've done it right. So there's a whole process around that.
Yeah. Or, I also want to speak to a lot of men out there I know who it's like the goal is for her to have an orgasm.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then once she's had an orgasm, then the goal shifts to like, okay, now
Mhm.
it's my turn. And
Yeah.
again, that's just kind of missing the point. It's still goal oriented. It could still
Yeah.
be like a seemingly compassionate goal of, okay, her pleasure first, great. But also if we're fixating on that orgasm experience, like you're speaking to, Ben, then we
Mhm.
risk missing all of the experience between here and there. So please
Yeah.
continue with that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and just to also clarify, usually those types of orgasms that people are chasing, almost always, I would say, are the sympathetic based, ejaculatory or the release orgasms that are very sympathetic. So afterwards, you're going to have a big come down versus what we're talking about can prolong and it's generative. You're not tired afterwards. There's no refractory period and it builds and builds and builds. So this is a whole different neural pathway, really, that we're developing our capacity for. But the last piece on equanimity I wanted to mention was coming into it again without expectations. You can also expect that sometimes there can be things that come into your sexual intimate union with your partner when you're practicing these kind of things where she can get very emotional. She might start crying, or she might start making different sounds that might not be what you would see in a porn scene, for instance. Like there's things that can come through a woman that can be deeply healing in these spaces that don't always look like pleasure necessarily. It's a lot of catharsis that can happen at times. So just wanted to add that in as a little disclaimer for anyone. If you're just starting to try out some of these things, there can be a whole process that women go through emotionally, just they've never felt so held and so safe, and so being like a man being so present with them, it can often bring up a lot of emotions for women. So remaining in equanimity even in that time with women, and continuing to just keep going. You don't stop, don't get too wrapped into her experience, but just be with it and be equanimous with it. Stay with your breath. There's nothing wrong if that's coming up. This is just, again, these are like the things we were never taught in porn. And when your partner is shedding those layers of tension and emotional baggage, or maybe things she doesn't even know, they could be, ancestral emotions or something, things that have been buried down deep, it can open her in ways that, just continue to grow with time. And this is full circle back to what we talked about in the very beginning of the intro to this podcast, with us as men being, the leaders of intimacy, being fire tenders, as we like to say, guardians of sacred intimacy. These are the pathways where we really open up deeper and deeper and deeper levels of union. So, yeah, I wanted to sprinkle those in there as well. Before we sign off, Hawks, is there any last words you have to say on sex and meditation?
I could say a couple more things on equanimity. Another way that we can practice this equanimity, and that I feel is important if we're earnestly exploring this path is to be equanimous as well with the sensations or lack of sensations in our own body
Mm-hmm.
as well, because there's also going there's often an experience of numbness to those sensations initially,
Mm-hmm.
in ourself or in our partner, and not attaching to this idea or another kind of end goal or craving of like, oh, I want to experience a non-ejaculatory orgasm, or I want to experience
Mm-hmm.
all this amazing subtle pleasure that Hawks and Ben said was possible. It's like actually just releasing that is the ticket. And whatever it is, can you be aware of that, and can you be equanimous with it? And that's a really deep practice of not attaching to the pleasure when it's there. And this is another way to also interrupt those patterns of premature ejaculation. And something like that is, if there's a lot of pleasure and arousal that we're experiencing, it might be that there's an unconscious pattern there of actually like attaching to that and craving more of it, even if in
Mm-hmm.
our mind, even if we think we're like, oh no, I don't want this because I'm going to come too soon, we might still have this pattern of like, oh, but there's this good feeling, I'm just going to keep trying to get more of that. And can we just continually release that and just smile into whatever it is that we're experiencing? And that's, yeah, just another piece on equanimity and not attaching to goals or experiences or cravings and aversions, and just to be fully present with what is. And sometimes it might be pleasurable sensations, sometimes it might be numbness, sometimes it might be something else, but to just allow whatever it is that
Mm-hmm.
we're experiencing to be felt and to be experienced and to be present with it. And oftentimes continuing on that path, there will inevitably be more and more feelings of, uh, you know, of joy, compassion, peace, well-being, as we like let go to those cravings and aversions. And this is getting like pretty deep now into some esoteric areas, but yeah, just I feel complete with this for now. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
I want to put a pin in just one last piece on equanimity because yeah, I got to hop on another call here in just a few minutes. But
mhm,
uh, being equanimous with our own desires while claiming our desires as men, being bold and claiming our desires without attachment to outcome. This is a really powerful practice for all of us as men. And there can be all sorts of processes that come up around that. So yeah, there's many open threads here, and we're just sort of covering the broad, foundations here of exploring this topic. And I'm excited to dive in more in future podcast episodes. But yeah, this has been a really great discussion today, Hawks. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
yeah, I feel like we definitely did leave some open threads there. So if you've been tuning in and you have any questions or things you'd like us to explain further, please drop some comments. Let us know what you think, and yeah, may we all bring a little more meditation into our sex with self or other, and through doing so, allow it to be the generative healing process that it can be. All right. Yeah. Shout out to all the brothers in our cohorts right now, allowing this to be possible. We love you guys. We'll see you on the calls this week.
All right. Much love, bros. Peace.